Well, welcome back to another episode of I Know I Know. I'm your host, Hudson Rainey, and I'm joined, oh no, not him again, Max Como. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's me again.
So, when we thought about doing another episode together, we were kind of thinking about doing a compilation type sorts, and we decided to do 20 songs from the 70s, like, for say, the Beatles broke up and they had their solo careers. Paul had his success with Wings and yada, yada, yada. And they reunited to do one album, and this was the album of all their material from the 70s.
Right.
So, first of all, we want to wish a happy birthday to Bob Dylan. Today is his 80th birthday of recording, May the 24th.
Indeed.
Yes, and I know you're a Dylan nerd, correct?
Well, am I a Dylan nerd? I'm definitely a Dylan fanatic. That's for sure.
Okay.
Love just about every era of his career. And today, as I was spinning some Dylan songs, just on streaming, and then I played a couple of vinyls. But as I was streaming, I was really making a point of jumping from 1962 to 1981 to then 2006 and then 2020, because the truth is with Bob Dylan, much like with Paul McCartney, whom we're going to be talking about today, we have just a wealth of material, and not every single album is a classic or a masterpiece by any means, but just about every album has a gem. And that goes for McCartney, that goes for Dylan, and that goes for, even George Harrison. His life was a bit shorter than Bob and Paul, but man, he had a lot of gems throughout the years as well.
You sure about that with Paul?
Oh, most definitely. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
I won't get you started again.
Hey, I can find a gem or two or three gems on every single Paul McCartney album. I have trouble with Press to Play, not a favorite album, but give me Footprints, give me Only Love Remains, give me Right Away, which is like a track that's not on the original vinyl,
Yeah.
but it was on the original CD. Right Away is fantastic. So I have trouble with Stranglehold and Move Over Busker and Talk More Talk, but there are still gems on that album.
Not with the podcast. I don't want to get Kid O'Toole is going to be really mad at one of my picks, but
Okay.
I was just talking about the lifespan of George. Of George being
right,
shorter
yes.
than Paul's.
Yes.
Plug for our episode that we did together on that.
There you go. So should we get this started?
Yes, this is going to be a lot of fun. So
I know it will.
This is going to be controversial. My opening track will be really controversial.
Okay, and I'm just going to grab a pen because I'm a bit of a playlist nerd. So I'm going to want to list the songs that you're going to name. And
because you're going to change them?
Playlist online.
Oh, good idea. And I'll link that playlist in the description. So What is your opening song?
What is mine?
Yes.
Being the Paul fanatic that I am, I made a point of not picking a Paul song to open up my playlist. I started it up with Love Comes to Everyone, which is the opening track on George Harrison's 1979 eponymous album, believe it or not. And I'm not proud to admit this, but it's the only George album I own on vinyl. I'm really just starting my George vinyls. I don't have very much John on vinyl either. I have everything Paul has released on vinyl. Well,
it's gettable.
Most of what he's released. Let's put it that way, because I mean, the man has just, I'm not talking single, I'm talking the albums. I'm an album guy. I own all his albums, the ones that are available. And I but anyway, I digress. Love Comes to Everyone, a great opener.
Yeah, I mean, it was a single, but it wasn't a big hit.
No, it was not a big hit, and it's not featured on that really pretty solid greatest hits that they put out back in, I think, 2002, I want to say.
Nine. I didn't like that greatest hits very much.
No,
It
it
didn't
was
have
2009.
anything from 33 and a third,
Right, you're right.
and it
I mean, I
had
just
like
thought
live
it was a
versions.
good glimpse into the career, and it was user friendly. It made you appreciate, oh, okay, so there's more to his solo career than All Things Must Pass. Because, I mean, I think that casual Beatles fans, or the general public, I don't think they know very much from George past a couple of hits from All Things Must Pass. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, maybe Cloud Nine and maybe Living in the Material World and maybe a
True.
couple songs from the self-titled like Blow Away or All Those Years Ago. But
Maybe. I think if you were around in those days, then yes, there's a good chance you'll know those songs. But I think, you're a very young generation of fans. I'm 40 now, so I'm, whatever, the 90s generation of fans, I guess. But I, I'm talking about, like, the new fans, and I count you in there, of course. I don't think there is very much George Harrison out there. And that's kind of a shame because he has a lot of gems, but I don't think people know very much other than, My Sweet Lord.
yeah, and it wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it was featured in that movie, the
I,
first or
I,
the second one.
I think it was featured in the second one. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, great song. I've always that was I think that was the first George album I actually owned
Right.
and
Well,
heard.
it was for me too. I mean, I bought the remaster that came out in, again, I'm going to screw up the
2004.
years. 2004.
Yes, I think that's the year.
Is it possible they put one out in like 99 before George's passing?
They just did that of All Things Must Pass, I think.
Right. That is what I was referring to, actually.
Oh, okay.
But you meant like the
The Dark Horse Years box.
right. Yes. Yes. Which is a must own. That's a fantastic box.
Yeah.
So what's your first song?
So I had to pick a Paul song because I need to be controversial
Yeah.
and I wanted to open with Mumbo.
All right.
Wildlife has always been one of my favorite Wings albums, and I love Mumbo. It's probably my favorite song on there. I love the Take a Tony and the
Yes.
screaming and the woo.
Yeah.
And I really liked it when a good friend of the show made an impression of that on his series called Ranking the Tracks.
There you go.
I
Yeah.
won't let his name be heard, but I know
Mumbo
he's
is one of
listening.
those tracks that sounds like a real fu. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I just gave you Ram, which is a masterpiece, and you didn't give me any love for that. Well, here, I'm just going to jam out and I'm going to scream and I'm going to let my demons out. And it's not going to make any sense, but at the same time, it's going to make all the sense in the world. That's Mumbo to me.
Paul had to give his yeah.
Yes.
That's that's the Paul that I like. I like rocking Paul. I like in your face Paul.
Yeah. I
So
like
let
Schmaltzy Paul too, I have to admit. But,
if you give me the answer on here, I am gonna lose it.
well, I don't actually.
Good.
Maybe that's a spoiler, I guess. But no, I don't have it on here. But I have to say, you gave me the answer. Just the guy sitting down at the piano during that Wings tour in 1976 and just playing it away and doing it with such ease. I don't know. I think that's a pretty cool track.
Yeah. I can't stand the vocals on it.
I find he's having fun and he sounds a little bit like um why am I forgetting his name now? Cheek to Cheek. Uh, his name will come back to me. The great star of the musicals of the 20s and 30s.
I know who you're
Once Upon
talking
a
about, but I
Time.
can't think of it.
Yes. Anyway, I think he's just, I don't know. I think he sounds great on there. Should we go into our second track?
Yes, what is the number 2 track for you?
Another song about love. It's a John Lennon song, and it's Going Down on Love.
Oh, I love that.
Love that song. And there's that quote from Help in there.
Yeah.
Somebody please help me. You
Yeah.
know, it's
I mean,
definitely a wink at Help. He that so wanted to re-record that song in a slower tempo. That's his wink at that, I find. As a listener, that's what I hear.
yeah, and the vocals on that song, that is my favorite John Lennon album, hands down. Like, it doesn't hold up to anything other that he did in his solo career. I mean, Mind Games is a close second, but
Right.
that whole album, and that is just one of the strongest songs. And I love that those bongos, the
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes,
but
and
yeah,
it's very sensual. There's something very sensual about it, and it sounds very easy and honest coming out of his mouth. There's nothing forced about it. There's nothing put on about it. It's John, and it's very, very close to my heart. I absolutely love that track, and it frustrates me that I never see it on any type of collection. Yoko puts out a new John greatest hits every 2 or 3 years. I'm a bit surprised that she's never included that song on
I don't think
Working
she really.
Class Hero, Give Me Some Truth, Lennon Legend, Lennon Collection. I mean, there have been so many, but never Going Down on Love, and it's a shame. It's a great song.
Yeah, I think she likes to shine away from the Walls and Bridges period because she wasn't in the picture.
Right. That makes a
So
lot of sense. She'll include Bless You, though. You don't like Bless You?
I don't like Lennon falsetto.
Hmm. I don't know. There's something about Bless You that I really love. It doesn't, that sounds a little bit like it took some effort. That doesn't
Yeah,
sound effortless, you
not
know?
like one day at a time.
Right, right. But yeah, no, I like Bless You. I'll go to bat for that one.
But yeah,
What's your second song?
this is this may be my favorite George Harrison solo song. And I don't, if it was released today as a single, it would have been a number 1 hit. And I don't know why it was not a single. I don't know what George was thinking. Beautiful Girl. Hands down my favorite George solo song.
Very, very nice pick. And I have to admit that although I do like that track, I it's not a track that I go back to very often. So now you're making me kind of want to give it another spin from
But
33 and a third.
yeah, I love the way that she smiled at me. I knew it there and then that she was A1. That's just like pure George.
Yeah, he was a ladies man for sure.
Yeah,
100%. More so than even Paul.
yeah,
I firmly believe that.
yeah. I mean,
Constant charmer.
yeah, just like me. I'm kidding.
Beautiful girl. Nice, nice choice. See, this is why doing these things is so much fun, is because you get to hear other people's favorites, and sort of it'll redirect me. I'm gonna give Beautiful Girl a listen as soon as we're done.
Yeah, I mean, I love the slide guitar solo in there. I think George is just such a beautiful guitar player and still underrated by a
Yeah,
lot of people. Everybody goes to Paul for being a guitar player. I'll say he's the best one there, technically, but George was
technically, yeah.
great too.
Yeah, and the thing with George is that he has early moments of brilliance from as early as with the Beatles. You know, that solo on "Till There Was You" is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, I mean,
The solo on "All My Loving" is gorgeous, very Chet Atkins, and very unique. You know, I mean that solo can't be played any other way.
yeah, and he was just fantastic, and I I wish he toured more, and I wish
Yeah.
that I was around to see him. I mean, I wasn't born when he died, so
No, I know. That's which is insane.
yeah. Does that scare you?
It doesn't scare me. It amazes me because it reminds me of how this thing is constant. 50 years from now, there's a 12-year-old that's going to listen to the Red album for the first time, and his mind is going to be blown. And there will be millions of other kids uh, in the same country that will have that same love for the Beatles. So imagine on the entire planet. I mean, this will go on. This will keep going on. My parents were surprised in 1995 when I became obsessed with the Beatles, and I was 15 years old. They were like, "But like, why the Beatles? They haven't been around since 1970, 10 years before you were even born." But it doesn't matter to us. We connect with these people's music, and they're not unique in terms of I see young people getting into Elvis, young people getting into Ella Fitzgerald, So I mean, there are many artists that people will forever love, but I mean, the Beatles are in a very, very special place. So no, nothing surprises me or nothing scares me about younger people falling in love with the Beatles. There's so much to fall in love with.
Does it scare you that you're that old though?
Ah, no, it doesn't. I mean, everything's up and down. You have the highest highs of your life at 40, and you have the lowest lows of life goes on. Life is what it is. And
As a wise man said, life begins at 40.
well, and I think on some levels, I think that's absolutely true. I really, really do.
Yeah, that's a long way there.
I know, I know. Uh, you're 14, right? Let's remind the
Yes.
world out there.
Yes,
14.
14.
There you go. And 14, and he's talking about which mix of a George Harrison album or a John Lennon album was better. Well, the 2009 mix is vastly superior to, it's great. The
Yeah.
circle goes on, my friend.
So, no, going to number 3 for you.
Lovin' Song.
It's the B side to Listen to What the Man Said.
That's right. And a song that most people don't know. Uh,
No. The
it's
Venus and
on
Mars
a
album is unheard of.
true, and it's Venus and Mars is a fantastic album. I think there are many highlights on that album. Um, Not very many low points. I know you're not, of course, a fan of You Gave Me the Answer, but I love that album. I know
Or the
Kid
A side to
O'Toole.
this song.
Excuse me.
Or the A side to this song. I'm not a
Uh,
fan of Listen to What the Man Said.
you're really not.
It doesn't scream number one hit to me.
Oh man, it does to me. It to me the joy in that song and the bounce in that song is absolutely mind blowing.
It's catchy, but it's on the lower point for me.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. Love and Song is to get back to it. It's a little bit lazy lyrically, I think maybe, arguably, but it doesn't matter. There's such a beauty to it, and it's unusually dark for a Paul McCartney love song.
Yeah, and I'm just Googling. I just wanted to see if that was Geoff Britton on drums.
I believe it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I think he was a fantastic drum player. Still is. I mean, because he is still alive, even though he's not in the public.
Right.
But yeah, great choice. And what were you saying about the Queen of Beatles media?
Kid O'Toole.
Yes.
I know that she's really not a fan of Magneto and Titanium Man.
Oh,
But if Kid and I ever get a chance, I'm throwing this out there, Kid. If you're listening, if you're watching, I would love to have a Beatles or solo Beatles conversation with you. You're amazing. But yeah, I know she really is not a fan of Magneto and Titanium Man. Just for the sound of the keyboards on that song, I'm a fan. I love that song.
we'll get to that because I think that's my favorite song on Venus and Mars.
Well,
So
there you go. What's your number 3?
we're going to Lennon. We're going to a controversial album. We're going with New York City.
New York
From
City. I
Sometime
knew
to
that was
New
going to
York
be on
City.
your list. I know you're a big fan of that song.
Oh yeah, I love the opening guitar riff. It's so reverby. I hate the production on this album. But we do know for a fact that we are getting Sometime in New York City. Did you see that it was confirmed on somebody commented on John Lennon's Instagram page and they replied 2022.
I was not aware of that. That's pretty cool though, because I'm assuming that there must be a lot of material, a lot of jams, a lot of stuff that I guess he would have done with Zappa and with I think he was playing with Elephant's Memory at that point, wasn't he?
Yeah, with Gary Van Soick. And
Right.
Gary, I know you're listening.
Well, so there you go. I mean, there might be some
You have my
really
email, I think.
there yeah, I would think there would be some interesting outtakes from there. I'll definitely be giving that a spin on Spotify. Whether or not I'll be purchasing the box set, I don't know. Sometime in New York City is it's a tough one for me, but I do love New York City, and I back you up on that one 100%. To me, it's a sequel to Ballad of John and Yoko.
Yeah, I like it better than Ballad of John and Yoko, but even though I really like that song,
Yeah, I guess I like them kind of equally. I just have a real soft spot for Paul's harmonies on of John and Yoko.
yeah, um,
He's putting so much into a song that he could have just decided to say, "Oh no, I'm busy today." But no, he went into the studio with John without George and Ringo and gave it his all. And that for me, I can hear that on Ballad of John and Yoko, and I love it. But anyway, again, I digress. Sorry about that.
yeah, but yeah, that was my number three. What's your number four pick?
My number four is an ode to Yoko. John wrote quite a few odes to Yoko, and this is arguably not that underrated or hidden gem ish because I think a lot of people are familiar with it. But I love Oh Yoko
Oh, I
from
love that.
Imagine.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song.
Love the harmonica. Love how much joy I can hear in John's voice, which is not always the case because he was pretty dark in the early 70s. Plastic Ono Band is my favorite Lennon solo album, but it's not an album that I can listen to just any day. It's
Yeah,
an album that I need to invest and prepare for almost. Um, whereas Oh Yoko on Imagine has some really heavy dirges on there. I don't want to be a soldier. Give me some truth. How do you sleep? I mean, there is a lot of vitriol on an album supposedly about peace and love, but Oh Yoko is pure love, and it's goofy, and it's childlike, and it's everything that he criticizes about Paul. But it's beautiful and it works.
yeah. I love that song. Imagine was my introduction to the Beatles, so
Right.
I have a soft spot for everything on that album.
It,
But
it's
yeah,
it's a beautiful album, and I listened to it recently. I on the 50th anniversary of Ram, I of course listened to Ram a ton. I think I listened to it a grand total of 5 or 6 times during the day. I
oh
had the
wow,
day off, and so I listened to it on Spotify when I went on my run. I listened to it on vinyl. Then I listened to it over dinner. Anyway, it was Ram Day. But before I went to bed, I decided, John released Imagine a few months later. I'm going to give Imagine a spin because I want to see which one I prefer, which one speaks to me. And I already knew the answer. I prefer Ram. I'm sorry to all the Lennon lovers. I prefer Ram. I just do. But Imagine, of course, is one of the greatest songs ever written. So I listened to the whole album, and it's heavy at times. And man, do I ever wish that John was just a little bit more positive on those early albums. But he's being himself.
yeah. But back to that.
Yes,
What's
yes.
your number four?
Well, my number four was Oyoko. What was
Okay.
your number four?
My number four was a Ringo track. I went with early 1970. Always love that song. One of my favorite Ringo solo songs, period. B side to It Don't Come Easy. What hasn't been said about it?
Right. And I have it in my list as well. Early 1970 is, I think, my favorite Ringo song because it really is written by him. I know probably George gave him plenty of help, and so did John and Klaus, and everyone had input, of course, but it clearly comes from him. It's his diary entry, it's his peace offering to all three of them, especially Paul, which he was a little bit estranged from at that point. It's beautiful. I love that song. So great, great pick.
But yeah, so what's your number five track?
Number five would be Some People Never Know.
Love that.
Love that song. Gorgeous acoustic melody, beautiful Paul and Linda harmonies. Could have been on Ram had it been ready for Ram. I'd take it in place of Long Haired Lady personally,
uh,
uh, but that's just me. Ram is perfect as is. Don't change anything. But if that song had been an option, I would have said, "What about Some People Never Know? Get that on there." But anyway, yes, that's a beautiful song. It goes on a bit too long with the bongos at the end, but it doesn't matter. It's beautiful. It's beautifully recorded. It sounds like they're in your living room or in your backyard around a fire. It's gorgeous. I love it. It makes me happy.
but yeah, I think that's a great song.
It really
So
is.
yeah, so my number five pick is I had to pick something from Back to the Egg because if you know me, I love Back to the Egg.
Beautiful album.
Oh, my favorite lineup of Wings, I'll be honest.
Okay, that's
Um,
fair. Lawrence is extraordinary.
Lawrence is seriously one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Right.
Um, I had to choose the opening song, Getting Closer.
Nice.
I love to say you don't love him, my salamander.
Yes, so do I actually. I love that line and I love that song.
I could listen to that song repeat 1,500 times.
Yes.
I love Steve Hawley's ba-dum, bam, bam, and then
Right.
I love Lawrence's solo in there. It's it's the Wings single that never was for me.
Right.
I don't know how it wasn't number one.
Indeed. It's a great song. I feel like maybe if it had come out a year earlier or 2 years earlier, it might have been a hit. Maybe it was just a little bit out of step in 1979, perhaps. But I mean, honestly, I don't get it either. It should have been a huge hit. You're absolutely correct.
I think if Good Night Tonight was on that album and Daytime Nighttime Suffering, take a couple of the ballads off the side two, it would have been a big album.
My biggest problem on Back to the Egg, and I love Denny Lane and I love his songs, but I really am not a fan of Again and Again and Again.
Okay. We disagree, but
Okay. I just, to me, it sounds like a really good pub band playing a pretty good pub rock song. It doesn't, it doesn't have that Wings magic for my money, or at least it doesn't fit with the rest of the flow of the album, maybe. Um, that's it's my only issue on Back to the Egg because I really do love that album, big time.
well, moving on to your number six pick. What is that?
My number six pick is a B side by George Harrison, possibly the best B side of his career, Deep Blue.
Oh, good choice. It didn't make the cut, but it was close.
And it's turning 50 this year. It sounds like your favorite George Harrison song off of disc two of the White Album. You know, it sounds, it's perfectly George. And I was listening to the lyrics this afternoon, and it was the first time I really actually like read the lyrics as I was listening to the track, and it's beautiful. It's about stepping out of the blue, stepping out of depression, getting away from the pressures and the stress. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous song. It's not only a beautiful sounding track because the acoustic guitar and he's using a dobro guitar on there. It has a beautiful sound, but it's also lyrically rich. So yeah, deep blue all the way. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, great choice. So moving on for my next Harrison pick, I wanted to choose something from All Things Must Pass. This was the only cut that made it from the album. Wah wah.
Right.
Bit of an
Wawa.
obscure one for me.
Yeah.
The I know you're a musician and you can probably explain the technical bit like with the reverb and stuff, but I'm guessing that was Phil Spector. I still don't know how I feel about that album with Phil Spector. I go back and forth all the time,
Right.
but it's a I've always just that's my favorite song on the album, hands down. I try to get the obscure stuff other than the casual pick for my favorites
Right.
personally, but yeah, I love the lyrics. It's his fu to the Beatles,
Yeah.
really.
Most definitely. And I that's the way I hear it, and I like that that's exactly what it is. And it just sounds like he's venting.
Yeah.
I think we all love hearing these four men vent. I think
Yeah,
we really do.
we
And
like
I
going to
think
their therapy
when
sessions.
absolutely, and I think when we hear them venting, but it doesn't sound authentic, like on something like I've Had Enough from London Town. I like that song, but it doesn't sound very honest. It sounds like he's just, doing a rocker. It doesn't sound like he's getting something off his chest. And I think that's what's missing on a track like that. When they
Exactly.
vent, honestly, we hear it and we feel it.
Yeah, but I agree. But love that song. But
Yeah.
what's your next? What are we up to? Seventh?
I you would be at your number 7 now. Yes.
Okay.
Because, well, did you name your number 6? My number 6 was Deep Blue.
Yes. Then I did Wah Wah.
Oh, of course, yes,
So
Wawa.
you're number 7.
Yes, all right. My number 7 would be the one that was a little bit earlier in your list, so I'm not going to go on about it. Early 1970. I love that song. I love that he has all those little references, the cookie from John, and the beep beep for Paul, which clearly is a wink wink at Drive My Car. And it's fun. I love early 1970, and if I were Ringo, I would be doing that live, and I would be making sure that everyone who can needs to know that Ringo wrote this song, because I think even a casual Beatles fan would be entertained by this song.
I agree because I mean Ringo kind of gets shoved aside as a solo artist. He's done. I mean, as we were discussing with the show, he's probably my least of the four, but he has good stuff
He
other than the
does.
Ringo album. I
He
mean,
does. And the fact that early 1970 is his and that it definitely comes from his heart, he wants to play with these three guys all together, all four of them together. There's nothing he wants more. And that song is a hope that that happens in the near future.
yeah, and yeah. So I agree. But moving on to my number 7, back to John. I have to pick this song from Mind Games. Gorgeous song, Out the Blue.
Out the Blue is beautiful.
It's one of the best love songs ever written. I love the how it just starts out beautiful and then it just slams in with every day
Yes.
and then lady. It sounds like Mind Games, oddly.
Yeah, he might have been in that sort of like mind frame in terms of structure and in terms of song building. Uh, but yeah, what a beautiful, beautiful song.
Yeah, and that 2002 remix, as I always talk about, is the only
Yes,
way to listen to that album. And
yes.
that just brings it out so well. And you can hear everything. You can hear Spinoza's guitar work. It's just pure brilliance.
It's definitely the version I have on CD. Is it the version that is available on Spotify though?
No,
No, the version on Spotify is the
it's 2010, which is junk, I think.
okay. Interesting.
If you need those, send me an email. Send if you need
Well,
to hear those remasters, folks,
it's
just send me an email.
it's definitely the CD version I have. The 2002 is definitely the CD version I have because that's when I bought that album
Yeah,
originally. So yeah, I definitely.
but love out the blue. Now going on
I
to your next pick.
yes, and my next pick is also from Mind Games. It is Only People.
Oh,
I love Only People. Some people have called it a lazy Power for the People, a lazy instant karma. It's John going through the motions, writing yet another anthem, and he's copying himself. I've heard all types of criticisms for that song,
you just
but I
mimicked
love it.
me.
It was used in a campaign for I can't remember what company, but it was used in a campaign I think for Microsoft like about 10 years ago.
Oh, I remember that.
And at that time, I was not familiar with this song. I hadn't taken a deep dive into John's solo material yet. And I wasn't familiar with it. And I remember hearing it and saying, man, that sounds like such a great Beatles slash Lennon imitation. And then, of course, I find out it's an actual John Lennon song. So I love that song. I think it's fabulous.
But yeah, love. Yeah, it's probably the one of the weaker songs on that album. I don't hate it, but I could live without it.
Okay. I just find he sounds to me like he's having fun.
Yeah,
And that to me is worth something, especially with John.
yeah. But moving on to my next pick, I am going with the song Wings, but I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say that this is the 2012 version.
Okay, right.
I don't like the original on Ringo the Fourth. I don't think I could tell you a single song off Ringo the Fourth. I've tried to like it, but I can't
Right.
stand that album.
No, that's a really tough one to get through, and Bad Boy is pretty tough to get through as
That
well.
one's okay.
Uh, but yeah, Wings is a good pick, and it's
Co-wrote with
nice that he
Vinnie
revisited
Poncia.
that.
Yeah, the only Ringo co-write, co- I'll say redo that I like. Because I
Right.
don't like it when Ringo needs to redo the same song over and over again.
Yeah. Single Pigeon.
Yeah,
Single
exactly.
Pigeon is my next pick.
Okay. Interesting.
Huge fan of Single Pigeon. To me, just a really comforting Paul song that, he just sits down at a piano, looks out the window, sees a pigeon. 20 minutes later, he has a song. That's how it feels to me. And I love that about it. It's naturally Paul. And it's a song that I'd like to think of in terms of the White Album. It sounds to me like a little character vignette from the White Album, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And it never outstays its welcome. It lasts a minute 53 seconds. It's just a beautiful little piece, and the brass section in that track, beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, you're a big fan of Red Rose, I believe.
Huge fan of Red Rose Speedway. I am far from saying it's a perfect album. And I understand people who dislike Red Rose Speedway, but it speaks to me and comforts me in a way that nothing else in Paul's canon can do quite the same way Red Rose can, for me personally.
Okay. So moving on to my next pick. I'm going with my favorite song from Ram, Backseat of My Car.
Backseat of My Car is brilliant.
I would this took a long time to like really be a big favorite because it was either this or Eat at Home, but I was gonna pick, oddly enough.
Right, right.
And I put on the Half Speed Master earlier today, and I was just listening to it, and I was just amazed. Those vocals I can just crave, as weird
Yeah.
as that sounds. I could listen to the oh, I won't even attempt to imitate Paul because I'll be sounding like Dylan in a second. But beautiful song.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful, classic. And I kind of hope that we get to hear and see him play a bit of it, a bit of what he had when the Peter Jackson Get Back movie comes out. Because he was fiddling away at that song during the Let It Be sessions. Didn't have complete lyrics yet, but he was exploring and trying it out. So yeah, that's an epic classic song. I absolutely love it.
Did you get the Half Speed Master just out of curiosity?
I ordered it and was told by Music Vaults on Friday that it wouldn't be shipped out until the 28th.
Ooh.
It is it has been really disappointing for me, my experiences with Music Vaults. Um, Not going to go into it, but yeah, it's been disappointing. And but then I think, really, do I need this? I don't consider myself an audiophile. I'm a musician. I'm a music lover. I can listen to these tracks just on streaming platforms and get the same joy. But I love putting on a record. I love my turntables. So yes, I want to have speed mastered.
I just had to get it
And Ram
because
is pretty much my favorite album ever. But man, it really it makes me shake my head that I'm gonna
yeah.
have to wait for this one. But
Did you
it is what
did
it
you
is.
have that same experience with the McCartney Half Speed?
The exact same experience.
Oh, I feel bad for you. I
Yeah.
just got the McCartney Half Speed.
And I'll be really honest with you about the McCartney half speed. And I know we're digressing, but let it be said, my favorite version to my ears that I've ever heard of McCartney is the archive release version on vinyl, the one that has his name like that white border from
The
the
black
archive
one.
version.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
black label.
Well, but the white, yes, it is the black label on the disc.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. Okay.
and it's the one that comes with the bonus disc of those pretty terrible outtakes,
Yeah.
Womankind, which is just horrendous.
Ugh.
We
Ugh.
did not need Womankind, but it's fun to listen to. But nonetheless, that vinyl doesn't spin very much. Anyway, let's get back to our list.
Um, whose turn is it? I lose track of everything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I mentioned Single Pigeon as
and I
my.
mentioned backseat.
There you go. My next one would be a George song, and it would be "Don't Let Me Wait Too Long."
Funny thing, that's my next pick.
Wow, love that song.
It's probably my favorite on that album. Um,
For me, it's probably "Blow Away," but you know what? Not "Blow Away."
Give Me Love.
Yeah, exactly. "Give Me Love." And I don't know why I've mixed up the titles of those two songs regularly.
You
Actually, I do.
brainwashed?
I discovered both of them on the very best of George Harrison that came out in the 2000s. That black and white album Olivia put together. I discovered both songs at the same time, so they sort of mix in my mind. But yeah, "Don't Let Me Wait Too Long." Isn't that a great song?
It is. I, I don't know why in the world it wasn't a single. I don't know what George was thinking, or if it was just the record company being
Right.
idiots, but that would have been a number one. And there was not another single released on Living in the Material World. And that could have used another single. Same with Red Rose, and same with Mind Games, same with
Yeah.
every solo Beatles album. that was
Right.
released in 1973, except for Ringo and Band on the Run.
And that's the crazy thing is, the last three songs that I named are all 1973 songs. I've said this a million times, but what an incredible year 1973 was for
Probably
Beatles.
the best for the solo Beatles.
It's unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah,
Paul with Band on the Run, Red Rose Speedway earlier in the year, Live and Let Die. John has Mind Games. George has Living in the Material World, and Ringo comes out with an
a
absolutely,
masterpiece.
yeah, it's a great album. So,
Yeah,
I mean, go figure. Ringo is the one that who's we don't expect much from, but then we get this extraordinary album. It must have been great to be alive as a Beatle fan in 1973.
and do you get the Red and the Blue albums? I mean,
Yes,
fun times.
absolutely. And I mean, I still love the Red and Blue albums. They're not perfect. I hate how underrepresented Revolver is on the Red album.
And
But
how
you know what?
overrepresented Rubber Soul is.
They're all songs that I love. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't say overrepresented. Is that what you said?
yeah,
It is overrepresented in terms of if you're going to compare with Revolver for sure. But in the end, it feels like those two albums, you should just get the whole thing,
yeah,
which of course we fanatics do.
yeah. But
My next song is also a 1973 song, and it's Sunshine Life for me.
oh, Sail Away Raymond, love that song.
Absolutely great, and I love that it's on an E chord. The whole thing is just a vamp on an E. It's a very simple sort of blues kind of monotonal thing, but it works beautifully. And it's again a song about escaping the miseries and stepping into the sun. It's very similar to Deep Blue in terms of the feeling of it. And both were written by George. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, love that song. But my next pick going to John Lennon,
Yeah.
I chose What You Got.
What You Got is fantastic.
Probably my favorite off of Walls and Bridges. I love that. Banna, 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 banna. And I
Yeah.
love the horngasms in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Um,
first time I ever heard What You Got was the version that was on the Lennon anthology box set.
oh, interesting.
And it's a version of him just doing the chorus. You don't know what you got until you lose it. And he's just repeating that over and over. And you feel like he's trying to build a song around it, but he's hasn't quite come up with it yet. And I love it just like that as a little mantra, kind of like Can You Take Me Back from the White Album. It's like just this little half finished idea, but I also love it the way it appears eventually on Walls and Bridges. Fantastic choice.
But yeah. So what's your next pick?
My next pick is maybe the most controversial of the list in terms of it's been on every John Lennon greatest hits. So how is this possibly underrated or a hidden gem? But Cold Turkey.
Okay.
I
I don't
love
think that's
Cold
underrated
Turkey.
at all.
Well, I feel like Cold Turkey is one of those songs that, you know, it can be sort of forgotten because it's more of it's tougher to access song.
Yeah.
It's not your mom's John Lennon. It won't play on the easy rock stations alongside his double fantasy songs, for instance. I mean, it's really from a guttural, very deep, dark place, and I just think it's amazing. I think it's an event of a track, and every time I put on Shaved Fish, it's always like my favorite moment when Cold Turkey comes on. I just think man, it's a blast. It's like, man, this guy is scary on that track.
But yeah, love that song. Um, moving on to our next pick. So for me, my next pick, moving to good old Ringo, the song that he co-wrote with Lennon. Um, I'm the Greatest.
Yes.
I like the Lennon version, but this is so Ringo.
Yes. It's so Ringo, and he's not afraid to really give it his all in terms of his acting. You can hear that in his performance. It's fun.
Yeah, and I would give anything to see him just open a show with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And you know what? I don't know why he wouldn't. I mean, Lennon wrote it for him as a gift, so it'd be like also an homage to John to sort of say, "Hey, I'm opening a show with this," and it's cheeky as well. I'm the greatest.
but it's Ringo.
Very very Ringo.
But yeah, great pick, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are we up to? Number 10?
No, we're a little bit past number 10. I think we're at number 13 actually.
Oh wow.
My number 13 would be Not Guilty.
Awesome. Good pick.
Um, it's a song that I was in a rush to listen to the first time I got George Harrison from 79, because of course I love the version on Anthology, and I knew the version on Anthology for at least 10 years before I actually got around, well, maybe not 10 years, but nearly. And so when I heard it, at first I was a bit disappointed because I was expecting the rock edge to it. But it's beautiful. It's reminiscent of the Esher demo version, and it just sounds gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's beautifully played. Great bass. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I adore that song. I've
it.
always adored it.
It's insane that they didn't put that on the White Album. The way it appears on Anthology 3 is pure perfection. It's such a great track, and I would pick that over Piggies and probably Savoy Truffle as well any day.
Okay. We disagree.
We disagree.
Yes,
Over Piggies or Savoy Truffle, especially.
both. I'm a sucker for Savoy truffle.
I sometimes am a sucker for Savoy Truffle, and I have to admit, when I'm playing the album in its entirety and we get to that song, I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah,
So maybe I'm being unfair to the track,
I like my sweets
but
like
it's not a
Eric.
song that I normally listen to if I'm making a Beatles mix.
Yeah. So moving on to what's it? Yeah, my next pick, my number 13. I
Yeah.
went with a McCartney B side, which I just love. It's my last McCartney pick. Woman Oh Why.
Oh Woman Oh Why is a banger.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
it screams ACDC. I love the bam from Denny Sewell, the bam, bam, doom, doom. And then
Yes.
I think that's Spinoza coming in with that guitar riff and it just explodes. And I've adored that song forever.
Yeah. It's a great, great, great track. And one that I'm always in a rush to play for people who don't think that McCartney went back to his helter skelter kind of rough edge very often. And I'm like, well, "Oh Woman, Oh Why" is a great example of him really letting it shred and scream, and it's guttural. And yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah. What's your next pick?
My next pick is a also a Paul song, and it's a little track off "Back to the Egg." It's a song that I I love to I love to listen to this track and just wonder what he was up to or what he was thinking. To You. I love To You. It's bizarre. It sounds like he's purposely mumbling, fumbling, screwing up the words. He's doing all sorts of weird things with it. It really sounds like just a one take rough, like, I'm going to work on this later. But then he decided, you know what, that'll do. It works. But I like that side of Paul. I know he does that perhaps for some too often, just sort of say, it's good enough. But I think with a song like To You, that good enough approach or mentality really works beautifully. I love it.
Yeah, great pick. I liked that one a lot. I think it's Lawrence Juber's favorite song on Back to the Egg, interestingly enough.
Right. I think I might have heard him say that. That's pretty cool. It's a great track.
Yeah. Now going on to my next pick, a George song, the opening song from 33 and a Third. and
Right.
that's Woman Don't You
Women
Cry
don't.
for Me.
Yes.
I love that opening bass line, the bum, bum, by Willie Weeks, I believe. The
Yes.
Then George comes in with the down, 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 down. Then I love his vocals on that song. I love the lyrics. It's catchy.
I love the yacht rock side of that song. It's very, you could almost picture the Eagles or the Doobie Brothers tackling that song, you
Yeah,
know?
it's this kind of song I want to hear at the grocery store.
Sure. Absolutely. And it'll make me smile. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, great,
I
wonderful
like
song.
I like that you don't feel that's a criticism because a lot of people would think that's a criticism, but it isn't. I mean, good grocery store music is can
It's
be
better
very
than what they
pleasant.
play at my grocery store.
There you go. My next pick is a bit of a cheat in a sense that it's a little bit. It was released past 1980, but it's a John song, and it's a song that, with the pandemic, finally we're hoping coming to an end. It seems really appropriate. I'm stepping out.
Okay, fair enough.
Really like that song a heck of a lot. I think it's great. Again, it's one of those tracks like, maybe John, just like with Paul, with To You, he was probably planning on redoing that vocal, you know, but Destiny took him away from us and he didn't get to redo those vocals. But it doesn't matter. They're beautiful and they're fun. He's clearly having a ball, and I just love it. I listened to it on repeat last summer when it started feeling for the first time like maybe we were going to get out of the COVID thing. Of course, we weren't done yet, but that song really spoke to me, and it still does.
Yeah, I mean, I I'm not a big fan of Milk and Honey as a whole.
It's not a perfect collection, not by any extreme, not
The
not by any, right?
it didn't feel finished. Like
No, and it
like
doesn't.
Brainwashed, which I think I didn't know that was posthumous for a long time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I guess maybe Brainwashed is a little bit. Maybe he was a little bit closer to being finished in that case.
Yeah, but he knew he was dying, and I think
Yes,
he was
he
like,
did. Whereas John, of course, had no idea, and John probably felt as though his career was finally restarting with Double Fantasy.
exactly. But moving on to your next pick. Oh, I already did mine. Never mind. My
You want
last
to know
John.
why?
Yes, that's what your next pick is.
No, actually, my next pick is "You" by George. It's I think we were discussing it shortly before starting out the show. Extra Texture is not a great album. There's a lot of filler on there, but and including You, which is reprised rather lazily later on in the album. But I think You is a burst of joy and energy. I think it sounds great, and I love to listen to it side by side with other records of that era. It really holds up. It's a great track, even though lyrically it's completely bankrupt. I mean, he has two lines or one line. It's like, why don't we do it in the road?
I love you.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
you, I mean, yeah, that's pretty.
Who? Who?
Yeah, exactly. But it really works. It's for some reason you know I love. I include it on every George playlist I ever do because I just find it lightens the mood with a burst of mid 70s. Put that side by side with "Say You Love Me" from
Yeah,
the White Fleetwood Mac album.
my
You
favorite
know,
Fleetwood Mac song.
it works kind of.
Yeah,
I mean, George Harrison is using a brass section, which is not very Fleetwood Mackey, but it's very mid 70s radio in a beautiful way, and I love it.
yeah. Moving on
Well,
to
what would be your pick?
I have the song from Rotogravure, Pure Gold.
Pure Gold is great.
McCartney
And
written.
and I actually discovered that song during quarantine. I wasn't even aware. I thought I'd heard every song that Paul had written for Ringo, but I'd never heard Pure Gold. I love Pure Gold.
It
It
is pure gold.
sounds, I mean, it sounds like Ringo, with his shirt, buttoned open with his big gold chain and his many rings. It's Gino Ringo, but I absolutely love that song. That's a great, great pick. And
Yeah,
nobody knows that song. Am I right?
right.
I
Um,
mean, you can't walk around with any casual fan and say, "Hey, let's discuss Pure Gold." I mean, people just don't know that song, and it's a shame. It's a really good one.
yeah. So moving on to your
Well,
next pick.
my next song would be a McCartney composition, and one that I really think is um, a hidden gem, and it shouldn't be. It's included on Wingspan, which I love, but "Daytime Nighttime Suffering," which you
Great
mentioned
B side.
earlier. It's such a great track. It's one of his, that is actually one of his masterpieces. And I say that
I
about
think so
way
too.
too many McCartney songs, but that song really is.
It
Like
is.
the sections uh are all gorgeous. It's every bit as strong as Band on the Run. It's just maybe not as radio obvious as Band on the Run was, maybe. And that's why it was just a B-side. But man, for a B-side, some bands would kill to have an A side half as good as that B side.
Yeah. Great track, I think. Moving on to my next Lennon pick, actually. Um, that is, I know the namesake to this show. Love it.
I it's crazy that you picked that one as your next one because it's actually, once again, it's the next one on my playlist. I know, the namesake of your show. I love that song.
I
And
do
it's a
too.
song that I've known for pretty much 20 years, maybe a little bit more, but I only started really particularly loving it in the last couple of years, just because I've been listening to it with fresher ears, and that connection that some people make with "I've Got a Feeling." Do you make that connection?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, it's
Um, good point.
basically the same riff, right?
Yeah, it is. Good point because I forgot about that.
It's that
Yeah,
it's that basically the same riff. It's just a little less dirty on the Lennon version. And I like people theorizing about it maybe being slightly directed at Paul in some of
yeah,
the words in there. I don't know if that's true. It was probably aimed at Yoko.
yeah. Yoko.
I mean, because everything was about Yoko, right? But I'd like to think that might have been about Paul because, the man liked to write about Paul too. I mean, we've all heard How Do You
His
Sleep?
only loves, Paul and Yoko.
They are. They absolutely are the two loves of his life, Paul and Yoko. I don't think Cynthia figures into the equation, sadly.
Yeah, poor Cynthia. Um, but how many picks do you have left?
Um, I have two picks left after I know I know.
Okay, I'm gonna have you list your two picks because my Zoom recording is not gonna like me.
Okay, well, and so I'm going to do that very quickly then. A Total Obscurity by George Harrison from his Wonderwall album. Again, slightly before the Beatles split, but Party Seacombe
Love
or
that.
Party Seacombe. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but that is a great instrumental track. And I love slipping it into instrumental mixes and saying, hey, this is George Harrison because it's beautiful. And my last pick would be my absolutely favorite hidden gem by Paul from the 70s, I'm Carrying.
George loved that.
And with reason. I think George would have done a beautiful version. I also think Lindsey Buckingham, Rumors era Lindsey Buckingham, would do a killer version of I'm Carrying. I think
Yes.
maybe if he'd done it on Tusk, he would have, weirded it up, and maybe that song didn't need that. But it's beautiful guitar picking. It's a beautiful vocal, very vulnerable, beautiful. I love I'm Carrying.
Yeah, I do too. But good pick. My last two picks are Dark Sweet Lady from the self-titled, written for Olivia. Always love that, and 6 o'clock from Ringo.
Wow, those are two songs that I absolutely love. Dark Sweet Lady is one of my favorite songs from that album, and I'll always go back to the first few months of quarantine when I listened to that song, because I was listening to that album quite a bit back then. That's a great pick. And 6 o'clock is perhaps my favorite Paul for Ringo song of all.
Yeah, good point. So I do want to just say you can email me at I know podcast at gmail.com. You please subscribe to our YouTube page, because let's just say Anchor is being a little bit of a pain and not putting stuff out to places. So I'm working on that, but YouTube is the place where you can get all of our episodes for the time being. So thank you for listening, and cheer up and don't cheer down.